Hey guys, how you going? Let's continue with our coverage of the Intelcom tournament that I was playing at last weekend with Shasvastii. Now, we're into game 3. I've managed to win the first 2 rounds, so feeling pretty strong, having to play against somebody who's also won their first 2 games. And this time it will be Shasvastii versus Ariadna, vanilla Ariadna at that, on this beautiful and gorgeous table over here, and the game will be safe area, so it's a matter of ending the game with more of the large quadrants captured than your opponent, and perhaps some specialists and base-to-base with some of the consoles. Again, just like with last game, I need to talk about a little background for this game, because in this particular game, up against my good buddy Nicola, and in the same way that my previous opponent at last round was somebody who does not play infiNity very much, my opponent here is a guy who does not play infiNity as his main game. He's been to one other small infiNity event before, and he doesn't really play a lot of practice games with us, but he knows the rules, not all of the rules. He's not as sort of up to speed with us on all of the nuances of the game and what all of the models do, but he's a guy that I've been playing against with Wargames since way back into the late 2000s when I played Warhammer. So this is a guy who played Warhammer Fantasy Battles very well. He played Warhammer 40,000 very well, pretty successful under 40k tournaments. When he came over to War Machine finally, I taught him how to play that, and he quickly surpassed me, in my opinion. I mean, I had a really good run in 2012, 2013, winning the tournaments, but I just wasn't as good a couple of years later once everybody else started to get into it a bit more. And he has also done well in games like Malifaux. So I knew this would be a really tough matchup, despite me having more experience with infiNity. I just have to point out that when it comes to wargaming systems, your skills are so transferable between systems. If you're the kind of person that's been playing infiNity for years and years and years, don't feel like you're entitled to being the best player when newer players come on board. If somebody else has been playing another wargaming system, they've become very good at memorizing stats, very good at learning, they're very good at eyeballing ranges, and this is a game with no pre-measuring, so the ability to just look at the board and go, right, that's definitely out of range for 24 inches there, or if I move over there, I'm definitely not going to come within 8 inches of that. That's a hugely important skill in infiNity. And in terms of visualizing situations, thinking ahead, planning, evaluating whether going in this spot and engaging in that fight is going to be to your advantage or detriment, this is something that an experienced war gamer can do. It's not a specific skill to infiNity. So I just really want to point out, guys, that in terms of skill, it's not so much about how long you've been studying infiNity for, but how good you are really as a gamer in terms of strategy and tactics. That's really, really important. It's a lot more important. The thing about infiNity is that it's got a soft ceiling, like a soft cap ceiling for skill, in terms of once you've learnt all the rules, it's hard to get much better at the game in terms of what to do with the basics. And then there's a much higher sort of hard cap skill ceiling where you can very gradually just get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better based on learning the nuances of the game. But there's not a lot between players that have actually got past the basic skill ceiling and the players that right at the top. This is a game with a lot of variance as well, where sometimes, like in poker, if you play that game, sometimes it is correct to take a fight where you're like 60 or 70% favorite, because it's just not a good idea to try and sort of forego good opportunities to get yourself into and try and look for opportunities where it's like a 90-95% chance to win a face-to-face roll. If you have to wait for the absolute best situations, the game can run away from you. Anyway, that's enough background from me. We're going into Game 3, and we're going to start talking about it. Now, this is the one mission which I have flagged for the use of my beta list, which involves the Sphinx. First time on the board with the Sphinx. I'm going to be using my Alien Queen miniature from the Aliens vs. Predators board game to represent her, because I do not have the actual Sphinx model. I'll be using the Dr. Worm, Bit and Kiss, the 2 Echadrons and R-Drone, Aswang Lieutenant. There'll only be 2 Noctifier missile launchers, although that's still quite a lot of Noctifier missile launchers, and a Malignos Fort Observer. So really quite keen to see how that does. The strategy is going to be to try to get second turn at all costs, and if I can do that, I'll just keep most of my army in hidden deployment if I can, and then move into the correct zones to win later on. If I am forced to go first, then it's just going to be a matter of using the Sphinx to kill as much as I can and then climb it on top of one of these buildings. And I quite like how the Sphinx could easily just go up to the top of that and hang out there, and it's going to be quite hard to remove it. Although having said that, I guess they could just shoot it from in the back. It wouldn't really get cover, so that might not be great. These little rooftops are made of like some sort of fabric, so I'm not too sure how I'm supposed to get up there, but that remains to be seen. Anyway, let's press on. This is just a picture of the overview of the table. So let's just jump into game 2 if I've got it. Oh, that's not game 2. It's game 3 that we're playing right here. Let's see if I can have a look. So my deployment zone, by the way, luckily, face-to-face roll for the lieutenant, I managed to win the face-to-face roll, thank God, and automatically take second turn. So my opponent's making me deploy first, and it's picking the table side he wants. So on my left-hand side, there's a Noctifer, and on my right-hand side, there's another Noctifer. In fact, this is the left-hand side one. This is the right-hand side one. Sorry, guys. The Malignos is on my right-hand side, right up to the edge of the infiltration, halfway through the table. Just hanging out here because the beautiful thing about this is that at the end of the game, I can come out of hidden deployment and just move straight into his zone, or move back into my zone, or move over there and capture that particular thing. I can also plant mines around here, just making it harder for him to do something like that. So that'll be really cool. Grab some orange. Okay, rest of my army, there's an HVT through here. What are we going to use? Orange. Yep, HVT over here. Icodron here, Ardron facing back. I'm just waiting for Van Zandt to sort of come around to the side, so that's why they're sort of facing backwards at this point. And, of course, Dr. Worm. He's situated there just because I want him to cover the position of my Noctifer, which is actually there. My Asswang lieutenant is manning the Low Pans noodle hut. He's on shift at the moment, on noodle duty at the moment, so he's waiting for customers. Just sitting prone, hiding behind the counter, waiting for an unsuspecting noodle customer to come up before he slams him in the face with an adhesive launcher. That's what he uses. He uses noodles to adhesive them. Bit and Kiss, hanging out on the left-hand side. Bit is prone. We have agreed to play these little railings as just completely opaque, so they block line of sight rather than having true line of sight through them. Of course, Kiss down the bottom with another Icodron to help me defend against the inevitable Van Zandt from behind. Note that the other Noctifer is up in the corner there, so that's where we're going with that. The Sphinx is in hidden deployment right next to the Asswang, and the beauty of this position is there's a line of fire along here and along here, but it doesn't lead to the enemy deployment zone, which is way back in that direction. So the Sphinx will cover the back line or these two angles, and the great thing is there's no line of sight until I actually reveal. So my opponent, deploying some volunteers and Kazakhs, so 1, 2, he's got a Galwegian. There's a camo marker here, which I know is actually from later in the game. That is, I don't know from the outset of the game, but we find out later it is a tank hunter with an autocannon. There is he's using these flame tokens rather annoyingly and confusingly to represent prone markers. So there's a foxtrot in my side of the board, which is prone, or near to my side of the board. Okay, so he's got so many camo markers it gets a bit confusing, but there's a chasseur in the middle building and another one through here with a mine and another mine, so that's mine there, and this is a mine here. This was the tank hunter we saw earlier. I believe there is a Spetsnaz next to the window, but it's prone. His lieutenant, Kazakh, is down there. I believe that's like an ambush marker or something like that. This model here might have been Jacques, good old Jacques, the Frenchman. But again, with so many camo markers, it's quite hard for me to remember what's what. On his left-hand side, he's got more volunteers and Kazakhs, and his reserve model is this dog soldier down here. He's planning on just charging around the corner and just trying to kill my cheerleaders, which is the right thing to do, really. Also, the doctor through the middle, we can see him there, just hanging out. So, unfortunately, Ariadna, very difficult opponent. Lots of models there. Going to be quite a tough game. So as soon as the dog soldier comes around the corner, the Noctifer fires a missile at it. Unfortunately, total immunity means that the missile is not going to have the explosive effect on the dog soldier, which is supremely annoying. We had a bit of a conversation about whether the first short skill brought me into line of sight or whether his second short skill did. I actually thought it was the second short skill, but it was really close, so I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, and we just did a missile versus a smoke grenade. The missile managed to win, but only inflicted a single wound, which then, of course, turns him into a raging raging dog guy with 2 chain rifles. Elsewhere, with Impetuous moving out the chappie, the Galwegian is heading towards my line, brandishing a massive broadsword. So as the dog soldier comes towards my line, the Noctifer's panicking a little bit and firing missiles, but unfortunately isn't able to take him down. He's getting some smoke handily nearby to the missile launcher, so that's going to allow him to close in. And then as he closes in and goes for the double chain rifle assault, I decided to reveal my Sphinx, just because I can't afford to have the dog soldier just coming around to my lines and staying alive. So knowing that he's committing quite a lot of his first turn orders here, and I've reduced his order pool with the command token a little bit, there's nothing else that he can really use to get to the Sphinx. His Spetsnaz won't have line of sight yet, so I'm just heading back with the Spitfire. Because of the ITS Season 9 rules, all of the tags have fatality level 1, so a Spitfire goes up to damage 15, which helps to eliminate the dog soldier. Sadly, though, Dog Soldier using Super Jump to get some chain rifle templates down on top of the Worm and the Noctifer. So after a few different face-to-face rolls and firefights here, involving all 4 of these models, the Noctifer takes a wound, so goes dogged and will die later, and the Dr. Worm unfortunately is killed, so he can't actually do any reviving of anybody. But the Dog Soldier is actually finally taken down through all of that. So here we can see the carnage of the Noctifer going down. Elsewhere, the Galwegian moving across does actually briefly come into line of sight of the Sphinx, but manages to drop a smoke and doesn't die, which is extremely annoying. So he does come around here and fires his chain rifle at me. I fire back with the flamethrower and really unluckily loses Kiss, Bit stays alive, and the Echidron dies as well. So during his turn, he's only used 2 models, but I've lost 1, 2, 3 orders from this, which is pretty bad. I'm only running a 10 order list, and I've still got a few more orders in hidden deployment. So in my retaliatory turn, I'm only going to have like 5 orders to spend, which is really yuck. But let's keep things in perspective, guys. This is a game plan where my intention is to just wait. And even though I may lose like 5 orders in terms of cheerleaders, I've still got like over 200 points left in my army, and that 200 points can actually, quite easily move into the right zones. It's only going to take 1 model in one zone, 1 model in one zone, then like a 105 point Sphinx or whatever it costs to win the game. So I'm not out of this. There is a smoke template drop there because of the Galwegian. That's what this little objective marker represents. So he's now moving across with a Foxtrot after I revealed my second Noctifer here. And the Foxtrot is going to rather foolishly, well, I shouldn't say foolishly, actually. The odds aren't bad for the Foxtrot to kill the Noctifer with his rifle, but the thing is, he's Bliss skill 11. I've got Tio Camo. He's at the right range band, so he's hitting me on 5s on 3 dice. I can still tank the armor saves, but I'm shooting back with a assault pistol or a missile launcher, depending on what I want to use, or dodging. So for him to kill the Noctifer, it's not a sure thing. It's not assured. It wouldn't be too surprising if he did get the hit through and I failed the armor save, but what ends up happening here is the Foxtrot whiffs this, and the Noctifer actually managed to survive through to my turn. Elsewhere, he's moving his Tank Hunter, camo marker number 10 here, just a little bit further across from where he started along the hallway, or the balcony, I should say. I don't know what you want to call this thing, because he wants to cover a different line of sight. And then it's my turn. So with about 5 or 6 orders, I don't really want to achieve that much. There is a mine around about here, and my Malignos is around about here. So what I want to do with the Sphinx is just go out and kill the mine and then retreat, so that my Malignos will be freed up to put my own mines down on his side of the table. And then it's just going to be a waiting game for him to spend orders trying to send guys my way. He's already lost his 2 most aggressive models apart from Van Zandt. So as he starts to lose his attacking models, I hope that his army will run out of steam, allowing me to simply conquer the zones correctly. Now, there is a shootout here. The Tank Hunter over in the distance, firing a brutal anti-tank, armor-piercing autocannon round at the Sphinx. But you've got to remember, it's a Sphinx, okay? So he's +3 to hit for range, but -6 to hit for Tio Camo, and I'm shooting back at him with a BS-14 tag with Tio Camo and everything. So 4 dice versus 1 in these situations the Sphinx actually comes out on top and wrecks the tank hunter. I do have to admit this could have gone really badly though. If he does roll really well and I whiff all my shots, I could take some severe damage here. I wouldn't be expecting to lose the model because the autocannon isn't going to inflict 3 wounds on the Sphinx. So we should be okay there. Now the Sphinx does move around to trying to discover the mine, but I whiffed the roll for that, so I can't even do it. And not really seeing any other good targets. I considered actually, sorry, what happens here is I managed to, I think I revealed this guy and he retreated, but what I was thinking of doing is actually using Climbing Plus to go right up here and trying to get a beat onto this guy, but I figured with only 5 orders or so in the turn, rather than committing to a play like that, it would be better for me to just come back, go back into TO camo mode, and continue the game, because I've got 2 turns left, and I'd rather that he come to me, to be honest. The one weakness that you should exploit if you're having trouble with Ariadna is that they don't have a lot of things which are really good at cracking defensive TO camo. They don't have like these MSV2 units or anything like that, and a lot of their attacking pieces just have rifles. It's quite hard to get a Spetsnaz all the way over the board to sort of get into the right position to kill you. So it's good to try and use your quality of your more superior units in the reactive turn and place them correctly and make the right aero decisions rather than going to them. So moving back to here, there is a Foxtrot which unfortunately for me managed to survive the onslaught and like go prone behind cover. So the tag comes back to a place where he's a lot safer. Note that there is a Malignos here, so if I do get surrounded, the Malignos could potentially reveal itself and help me fight off any attackers. So here we are, ending up at the end of my first turn, hanging out back here. I have lost an Echidron earlier on to, unfortunately, the actual chain rifle super jumping from the dog soldier. I've still got my what do you call this guy? Still got my Noctifer on the extreme left-hand side of the table, so you can see over here, Noctifer over here. I've moved my Asswang out into here just to help me defend against the back line. R-Drone actually facing the wrong way, which we're going to see is a problem, and Sphinx just covering around along there. So Van Zandt decides to show up. I think that if anything in this game, this is the one mistake that my opponent did, which was a bit more of an unforced error. Van Zandt shows up so that he can actually take advantage of me, facing the wrong way. He immediately shoots my flashpole spot and destroys it with his rifle, and then he can start shooting at the Sphinx. But you've got to realize that TO camo, Van Zandt's hitting on a pretty low number, and as soon as the Sphinx turns around after surviving the shot, the Sphinx is shooting back and hitting on like a 17 on 1 dice. So if you're Van Zandt and you say Blister Skill 12 or 13, hitting on something like 9s or 10s, I can't remember what he needed, and I'm hitting on a 17, and he's only got 3 dice, well, yeah, you might get a few crits in the long run, but how long are you going to survive? It's only going to take 2 or 3 lost face-to-face rolls before Van Zandt's dead. That's exactly what happens. Van Zandt is destroyed. So this Foxtrot again has another go at the Noctifer, but just can't take him. The rifle's just not good enough against the TO camo. I was wondering in my turn whether I should have been a bit more defensive with the Noctifer, but again, the Noctifer's not going to be one of the models which is going to be taking the zones in all likelihood. He could be, but they've also got Bit to move out for that, and she's a specialist to actually take on this objective anyway. But as it happened, the Noctifer still managed to survive. Elsewhere, he's got his Foxtrot, which is prone, not really doing too much else there, so goes back into camo mode. He's moving around with some of his troops just to get them into position for that final last turn push into their safe area zones. Then it's my turn again, so the Sphinx moving out to discover the mine again, fails the discover check again, so I decided to move over and just try and tank it, and luckily just tanked it without losing any damage point, structure points, so that was good, finally. I feel like I'm not very effective in my active turns here, just the reactive ones. And then moving away, you can see the mine detonating. This allows me to get my Malignos model. This is actually the legit Malignos model from the starter set. Starting to place some mines here, which is going to make it more annoying for him to assault my Sphinx and to get his models into my side of the table. Mines, guys, are very effective against camo markers, so if you're struggling against Ariadna, try to take models that can place them because they can be very useful. Remember, the Ariadna guy has to come out of camo state before he actually goes after these. In my turn, the Foxtrot, another small mistake here, hasn't really gone back into total cover, so this time the shoe's on the other foot. Malignos can whip out his Assault Pistol, 4 shots at medium range against 1 rifle, and the Noctifer does manage to destroy the Foxtrot there, which is great. Sphinx going back into Teo Camo mode after the mines have been laid down here by the Malignos. The Malignos, I'm not too sure if you can see him. You have to look very closely at the photograph. He's in here. The photograph is very dark because he's actually inside the building, but the Malignos has gone back in there and gone back into Teo Camo mode. And elsewhere, the Asswang has moved around just to get a bit closer to the final push to actually control these zones. Alright, my opponent's turn. He's only got one thing he can do. He doesn't have the firepower to deal with my army, so he's just going to move through with his specialists, moving through to the zones. Doctor's moving down, moving out with his camo markers. Everybody's making a run for it. Coordinated orders are all being spammed. Looking at the table here, he's moving a lot of guys out here. The Chasseur moving through, another Chasseur moving through. Doctor coming down, so he's in the correct zone. We're splitting a zone around through here. He's got a lot of models in this general area, but does he have enough? Is there going to be more than 100 points if the Sphinx does move in? That is the question. Also, his Lieutenant moving down, trying to get out of his deployment zone. He does move one of his camo markers, possibly his Lieutenant, into my side of the board. So the hope here is that I'm still going to have models which are expensive enough to actually outweigh the models that he's got in my zone. Another model moving through here. Sorry this is a bit fast-paced, guys, but I just don't really have a lot of recollection or photographs of the exact locations and context with the map at this point. So I think you get the picture. He's just moving everything around here. He does have a single specialist in base-to-base with one of the consoles to pick him up a bonus point. So that's going to be a tiebreaker if I only manage to get 2 of the quadrants. So, in my turn, I have a very, very long think about it. And then I decide that I'm going to have to make a bit of a play here. The Malignos moves all the way around from this side of the table through to here. Bear in mind I only have 5 orders to go with, so I'm having to coordinate as well. So Malignos moving into my side of the table, onto my right-hand quadrant with the Asswang, and is able to pick up this objective as a specialist to deny him the tiebreaker point, so it's going to be all about the zones. The Asswang also controlling this. So between the cost of the Malignos and the Asswang, let's just look up the details here. So 36 for him plus 26 for him. That is 62 unless I'm really bad at maths. 62 in this zone. And then the Sphinx moving out through here, moving around here into his zone. And it's just going to be a matter of whether that 106-point model is going to be worth more than all of the cheap Ariadna troops in his side of the table. I'm guessing it will be. So here you go here. One of the final orders is to actually try and kill one of his troopers to reduce the number of points there as well. So finally we get a bit of an overview photo and we can actually look at this a little bit more detail. So this is me standing up on my chair and having a good look. Okay, so let's draw a line. This is my deployment zone right here. Okay, and here's the middle of the table through here. Okay, and the mid zone of the exact middle of the table is around about there. So if we look at it this way, and in fact I might even bring my face right down to the bottom here. This particular quadrant here, we're going to grab a different color. This belongs to Ariadna. So he's got a model in that zone, and I've got nothing in there. And the little console here is being contested by his Kazakh. So he's got that quadrant, and he's picked up a tick for that particular zone. If I get a nice purple Shasvastii, I ended up getting this zone here because I've got the 32-point Malignos there and the 32-point Asswang there, and I've actually picked up the objective to counter his objective. He has moved a Chasseur into the zone there, and and like some sort of model into this corner of the building here. But the cost of the Malignos and the Asswang was much greater than the Chasseur, plus I think it was Jacques the Frenchman, in my zone. So Shasvastii holds it for this zone. Shasvastii also holds this particular zone here as well, because I have managed to move my Noctifer down from the stairs onto this objective. Now, I'm not a specialist, so I can't actually get a point for it, but the Noctifer is worth more points than the Chasseur here, so that's 2 zones to Shasvastii. Now, if I can pick up this last zone here, it'll be a win. If not, it will be a draw. But adding up the points, the Sphinx definitely had more points than the few plebs around here, who collectively probably only worth 80, 90 points at best. So this would normally mean a win, but here is where the video turns into a bit more of a rant, and we start to get a bit talkative, shall we say, about ITS. Now, there is a rule in this mission called Intelcom, and we also named our tournament after the word Intelcom, so don't be confused. There's Intelcom the tournament, which I'm participating in, and Intelcom the rule. It says that when you draw your classified card, you're allowed to look at the value on the card and choose whether you want to exchange the opportunity to get that classified point with the Intelcom rule, which allows you to add the points value of that card to one of these zones. Now, anybody who has half a brain in this mission should really be choosing that, because getting a 4-point swing for having more quadrants is a lot more important than getting a single point classified. Now, at the start of the game, you both roll a dice, and whoever rolls the highest has to choose whether they're exchanging their classified first, and we both did. I got a card with about 30 points, he got a card with about 20 points. So my first criticism of this rule is that it's just complete, random number draw as to who gets a extra point bonus for their turn at the end. That is stupid. That is a ridiculous thing, and I believe that Corvus Belli should take that out of the game as soon as possible, because it's just not something you want to leave up to luck. I'd rather my game be determined by shooting in tactics and dice rolls that are actually in the game, rather than just an arbitrary drawing of a card in cases where we've both played really well and there's only like 5 or 10 points difference in a particular zone, and one player's got a higher card to play. So I think that sucks. The other thing which I think is very stupid is at the end of the game, you don't put your card down simultaneously. It's determined by the order of the initiative. So the poor old player who has to go first, which is already a detriment in this game, having to go first means that you can't actually go to the zones that you want to at the end, and you don't have a chance to shoot out enemy who are camping zones as effectively. You also have to put down your Intelcom card first. So because these two zones are actually quite closely contested, if my opponent picks up this zone with his card, well, I just counter it by playing my card on top of it. Whereas if he picks up this zone, well, again, I have to play my card on top of it. If it was the other way around, and I had to actually add my card to one of these zones, he just takes the other one, and then he draws the game. So because of that rule, this game was a win to me rather than a draw. Now, I felt like I deserved the win because I played reasonably well. I managed to hold out despite losing half my orders. I had so many of my points and the value of my troops banked into these high-value models, which I was conservative with, and I sort of played around the camo spam Ariadna fairly well. But I do feel like the game was largely determined by the Lieutenant's dice roll at the start. If he had won it, and we talked about this, he would definitely have taken second turn, and it would have been very hard for my Sphinx to have eliminated a lot of camo markers and then survived in enemy territory and, kept enough points in his zones. My Noctifus wouldn't have been very good against shooting back at his markers. So I really feel like I would have lost this if I had not won the Lieutenant's role. So there you go, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this game. It was good to play against an opponent who was very, very good in terms of being a skilled, wargamer. I had the edge being that I play infiNity a lot more than he does, so we have to, give him credit for actually playing very well despite not having a lot of practice at this particular system. But there you have it, safe area. I was glad to leave this mission behind, but hope you guys enjoyed this one while it was.